Welcome to Convention Reviews. Today we'll be talking about Animazement 2026. This is an annual anime convention that occurs in Raleigh, North Carolina at the Raleigh Convention Center, generally over Memorial Day weekend. Animazement is a really unique convention, partially because it is one of the oldest anime cons in the Carolinas, but also due to the fact that because of its non-profit nature, it very much is heavily in the educational sector compared to a lot of anime cons that have kind of started to spread out into other East Asian and pop culture media. One thing that really separates Animazement from a lot of other conventions is the fact that they really get a lot of Japanese guests to come in from a wide variety of backgrounds, from directing to producing, animating, as well as a lot of other very specific fields that you normally would not see them outside of like an Anime Expo or Otakon, among many other large heavy-hitting cons, which is a really unique treat, especially for a mid-size convention. The event is split up into many different panel rooms for specifically fan panels as well as professional panelists, as well as there's a lot of other tailings there, such as a very large arcade video game room with a lot of import Japanese video games, as well as the fact that they had some really fun little side activities like the stamp rally, which was really fun to kind of collect around the entire campus. The event also has a really sizable vendors hall as well as artist alley for pretty much eating up about 2/3 of the bottom basement of the convention center, which really offers a wide variety of options, to say the least. One of the other things I will also say this convention also holds is what's referred to as Anime Hell or just Hell, which is a really fun internet soup kind of event on Friday nights where they get a bunch of random clips from stuff. They've been running it for years and it's always a treat to see. One thing I did want to mention was that the attendance was noticeably down this year compared to previous Animazements I've attended. One of the big reasons behind this is most likely due to the state of the economy. For those who may be watching this in the future, we are currently at war with Iran, which has caused oil prices to really go up, as well as a lot of other prices as well. So probably there is a lot of people who chose not to attend this year for that reason, or chose mostly to go on a Saturday. Though there were less people this year, it definitely was a much more chill environment, and I think a lot of people really enjoyed the fact that there wasn't anything crazy that really happened at the event outside of just having slightly lower numbers, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Animazement's also known for attracting many very high-quality panelists throughout the weekend, including Awesomely Bad Crew, Fatal Fanatics, Third Impact Anime, and Trivia Nights. Trivia Nights is known for doing many of the high-quality game show-style panels, as well as some really fun panels involving commercials from Japan, which is always a blast at these events. Some of the non-featured panelists do bring a lot of really interesting content as well. There was one individual who did a topic on going to Japan. There was another person that did a really interesting aspect of like the translations of like how do titles go from Japanese to English and when do they go each way, which is kind of interesting. There was another person who did a really interesting work on Suikoden, which is a pretty popular video game franchise, as well as there was some really interesting titles on Vocaloid and Hatsune Miku. Another person did a topic on amusement parks in Japan, which was really interesting, especially if you're planning to go there, as well as, some other interesting titles such as, anime that wasn't dubbed that really deserves some more love. Another featured panelist of Animazement is the Third Impact Anime podcast. They do a lot of content for Animazement around the Carolinas and have done some really quality content, especially considering everything from Thursday through Sunday. They had a really interesting panel on Baby Metal, which is probably one of the bigger Japanese musical groups to kind of hit the US. They also did a really nice panel on Lupin the Third with Sideburns and Cigarettes, which is another podcast group, which was really thoroughly interesting to kind of cover a lot of the Lupin stuff. There was another panel on cursed tapes, which, kind of covered some of the better, Japanese import tapes and sort of the cultural influence of a lot of these particular works, which was quite interesting to say the least. There also was some really interesting aspects of talking about why certain franchises never really took off here in the US, Detective Conan being probably one of the bigger ones. Outside of that, and Gintama, which was really interesting to see how that was kind of broken down, especially for fans who may not be familiar with that particular kind of work. They also had another really great panel on talking about sort of collecting and sort of doing it in a healthy, ergonomical way, which I think that's something that a lot of fans could take out of it, especially if you don't have a lot of money. But there also were some interesting ones as well, also talking about, sort of these old school giant robots as well. That was also quite fun. especially since many were sort of from the bygone era of giant robots where character designs were a little different. One of the really unique panels at Animazement this year was about David Lynch in Japan, which covered the artist and director David Lynch and his career and the fact that he was a pretty popular figure in Japanese culture in the 1990s throughout the 2000s and really kind of left a little bit of a mark on history, which I was not aware of, which was pretty cool to learn about. Another featured panelist was the Awesomely Bad Crew, who notoriously is known for making a lot of really great content, especially their Ugly Giant Robots, which has become a really fun Thursday convention starter, as well as they run a lot of music video related content, especially like really bad music videos. But probably their most notoriously well-known aspect is the Anime Home Video Museum. Interestingly, what started off as a panel talking about the media of yesteryear has really evolved into a really interesting collection of artifacts from the various periods of time, especially considering that film media has gone through a wide evolution of different types of media that was tried and failed over time. And it's really interesting to see the fact that every decade there was a lot of different vying technologies that tried to basically come out on top. Although we may know just basic ones like Betamax, VHS, DVD, Blu-ray as being kind of the ones that kind of won the overall spectrum, there is quite a lot of lost media out there that was tried for a couple of years and just for whatever reason didn't catch on, which is a really great way of kind of preserving this kind of media, especially for older generations that might vaguely remember some of these types of media. So if you happen to find yourself in the dealer's hall, it's definitely worth checking out for, a little bit time. The staff is really knowledgeable on this particular material, and I'll say they also had a couple of really cute little signs also that were also pretty fun. The featured musical guest for this year was Shihori. She has performed a lot of anime-related music over the years and really is one of those people that has contributed to a lot of really popular shows as well. And she really did a really great show over Saturday as well, really kind of testing the fact that Animazement really gets some key talent. Overall, I had a really great time at Animazement. It was very chill, very well laid out for the most part, and if you're really looking for a really interesting anime convention experience that you won't find other places, please check out Animazement. It may not be the largest anime con, but I think it's really that right size of it's just big enough to have a lot of really cool diversity without feeling overwhelming. And if you attended Animazement, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next convention review.